Have you ever felt resentment building inside you when someone wronged you? Maybe they took credit for your work, or they hurt someone you loved, or they simply refused to see the damage they caused. And in that moment, when the anger settled in your chest like a stone, did you wonder what was happening to your soul? Not in some abstract way, but actually happening, right there in that exact second. Throughout the 20th century, Padre Pio of Pietrelcina heard confessions from dawn until midnight. 50 years of sitting in that wooden box, listening to the weight people carried. He heard murders confessed, adultery admitted, theft detailed down to the last coin. But according to Father Alessio Parente, who lived with Padre Pio at the Friary of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotondo from 1958 until the saint's death in 1968, there was one sin that disturbed the friar more than almost any other. Not the dramatic ones, not the violent ones, the quiet one. Resentment, the cold anger that sits in the heart and grows roots. Speaking a single word. He knew sins they had forgotten. He knew graces they had received. And he knew when resentment had taken hold, because he said it changed the color of the soul. Father Gabriele Amorth, the exorcist of Rome who knew Padre Pio personally and documented his conversations with him in his book New Witness for the Defense, published in 2003, recorded that Padre Pio once told him, "When someone holds resentment, I see their soul covered in a gray film like smoke on glass. It blocks the light. The person can still function, still pray, still go to Mass, but inside they are becoming dark." This script is researched and factual, using sources from Father Gabriele Amorth's direct interviews with Padre Pio, published in New Witness for the Defense, and the detailed testimonies collected in the Positio for Padre Pio's canonization process, which contains sworn statements from 42 witnesses who lived with him daily. These aren't popular sources. These are the depositions used by the Vatican Tribunal. Now back to the information. One case stands out. It happened in the spring of 1953. A woman named Maria, 37 years old, traveled from Naples to see Padre Pio. The journey took her 9 hours by train. She arrived at the friary exhausted, her face pale, her hands shaking. She had not slept properly in 2 years. According to the testimony of Father Joseph Pius, who was present that day and recorded the encounter in his personal diary now archived at the monastery, Maria had been carrying a wound that no doctor could touch. Her sister had stolen her inheritance, every lira. Their father had died in 1951, leaving a small house and some savings. Maria's sister, the executor, had forged documents and taken everything. Maria found out 6 months later when she went to claim her share. By then, the house was sold. The money was gone. The sister denied everything. Maria tried to forgive. She prayed the Our Father every night, forcing the words out. "Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us." But every time she said it, something hardened inside her. She saw her sister's face. She remembered the lies. The anger became a companion, always there, whispering in the background. It told her she was right to be angry. It told her forgiveness was weakness. It told her that her sister deserved punishment, and until she got it, there could be no peace. Your body is fine. Your soul is dying. I see it. The resentment you carry is like poison in your blood. Every day it spreads a little further. You think you are holding anger against your sister, but you are holding it against God. You think he does not know. You have taken his job. You have made yourself judge. And now you are trapped. He paused. Then he said something that Maria would repeat for the rest of her life. Every minute you hold this anger, you build a wall between yourself and heaven, not because God is far, but because you cannot see him through the smoke. Look at his feet. Look at his side. He forgave the men who did that while they were still doing it. If he can forgive that, you can forgive a sister who stole money. Maria protested. She said, "Father, it is not the same." Padre Pio's voice turned sharp. "It is exactly the same. Sin is sin, and resentment is pride wearing the mask of justice." And for the first time in 2 years, she stopped defending herself. She stopped rehearsing the arguments. She stopped imagining the moment her sister would finally admit the truth. She just looked at the nails. She looked at the blood. And she understood what Padre Pio meant. She had been waiting for justice before she would forgive. But Christ forgave first. Justice came later. Mercy came first. According to Father Joseph Pius, Maria stayed in San Giovanni Rotondo for 3 days. She went to confession again on the 3rd day. This time, Padre Pio smiled. He said, "Now I see light." Maria asked, "Father, what changed?" He said, "You let go. The smoke is clearing." In it, she said, "I forgive you. I do not need you to admit what you did. I do not need you to apologize. I forgive you because holding this anger was killing me, and I choose to live." She mailed the letter and waited. 3 weeks passed. Nothing. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon in June of 1953, her sister appeared at her door. She was crying. She confessed everything. She said she had been tormented by guilt every single day. She said she could not sleep. She could not eat. She felt like something was crushing her chest. And when she received Maria's letter, she broke. And Maria later told Father Joseph Pius that the day she forgave was the day she started breathing again. And because they felt justified, they never examined what the anger was doing to them. They never noticed the slow decay, the coldness creeping into their prayers, the distance growing between them and God, the inability to feel joy, the constant rehearsal of grievances, the way every conversation eventually circled back to the wound. A man named Domenico came to San Giovanni Rotondo in 1962. He was 49 years old. He had not been to Mass in 12 years. His son had been killed in a factory accident in 1950. The factory owner had bribed officials to avoid responsibility. No charges were filed. No compensation was paid. Domenico's son was buried, and the factory kept running. He stopped going to church because he said God had abandoned him. He stopped speaking to friends because they told him to move on. He stopped smiling. He stopped sleeping well. He worked. He ate. He existed, but he was hollow. His wife finally begged him to see Padre Pio. She said, "If anyone can help you, he can." Domenico agreed, but only to quiet her. He said, "You have been carrying a dead body for 12 years. Domenico was stunned. He said, "Father, my son is dead." Padre Pio said, "I know, but you are carrying the anger like a corpse on your back. You carry it everywhere. You sleep with it. You eat with it. You talk to it. And it is rotting. It is poisoning everything around you. Your wife suffers. Your other children suffer. You suffer. And your son, in heaven, suffers watching you destroy yourself over something you cannot change. You can carry this resentment until it kills you, or you can lay it down and let God handle it. But you cannot do both. You cannot hold resentment and hold peace. You cannot hold resentment and hold faith. Choose." Domenico repeated the words. His voice cracked. Tears started. He said it again and again. And with each repetition, something shifted. The weight did not disappear instantly, but it loosened. For the first time in 12 years, Domenico felt something other than anger. He felt tired, exhausted, but also lighter. And drop a comment letting us know what city you're watching from. These stories are sourced from Father Alessio Parente's first-hand memoir with Padre Pio, and from the sworn testimonies in the official canonization process archived at the Vatican, documents most people never see. Now back to the story. He said, "Father, I cannot." Padre Pio said, "Then you are still holding the resentment. You are still choosing to be judge. Pray for him, not because he deserves it. Pray for him because you need to stop hating." Domenico left the confessional shaking. He did not want to pray for the man who caused his son's death, but he tried. The first day he could barely get the words out. The second day it felt like choking. The third day, something broke. He prayed the Our Father, and instead of thinking about the factory owner, he thought about his son. He thought about the boy's laugh, his kindness, his love. And he realized that his son would not want him to live like this. His son would want him to be free. He started smiling at his other children. He did not forget his son. He never stopped missing him. But he stopped letting the anger define him. And years later, when Father Alessio Parente asked him what Padre Pio had done, Domenico said, "He showed me that I was choosing death every day. He gave me permission to choose life instead." You feel anger. That is natural. But resentment is what happens when you take that feeling and nurse it. You feed it. You protect it. You justify it. And over time, it becomes part of your identity. You become the person who was wronged. And that identity gives you a strange comfort because it excuses you from moving forward. You do not have to forgive. You do not have to let go. You can stay angry and everyone will understand why. But Padre Pio said that comfort is a trap. It keeps you chained to the past. It keeps you replaying the same injury over and over. And while you are stuck there, life is passing you by, grace is passing you by, joy is passing you by. You're so busy holding on to the wrong that you cannot receive the good. Your hands are full, your heart is full. There's no room for anything else. Father Gabriele Amorth recorded in his notes that Padre Pio once said, "Resentment is the sin Satan loves most because it makes people do his work for him. He does not need to attack them. They attack themselves. They close their own hearts. They build their own prisons. And they call it justice." This statement appears in Amorth's personal journal from 1966, now kept in the archives of the International Association of Exorcists in Rome. She told herself she was being faithful, that she was upholding her vows even though he had broken his, but Father Joseph Pius, who witnessed her confession, recorded that Padre Pio saw something different. He saw resentment disguised as virtue. You can tell yourself you are the victim, and as long as you are the victim, you do not have to change. You do not have to grow. You do not have to risk being hurt again. You hide behind your suffering, and you call it holiness. But it is not holiness. It is fear and pride wrapped in the language of martyrdom. Padre Pio nodded. Yes, he sinned. But his sin does not give you permission to stop living. Forgiveness is not about him. It is about you. You forgive so that you can be free. Right now, he is living his life. He moved on 15 years ago, but you are still chained to him. He has the key, and you gave it to him. take it back. But she also felt something she had not felt in years. She felt the truth. She had been hiding. She had been using her pain as armor. And it had kept her safe, but it had also kept her alone. She spent the next 2 days walking the hills around San Giovanni Rotondo, praying, thinking, crying. And on the 3rd day, she went back to confession. She said, "Father, I forgive him, not because he deserves it, but because I deserve to be free." And years later, she wrote to Father Joseph Pius and said, "Padre Pio gave me back my life. I did not know I had buried it until he helped me dig it up. And the longer you hold it, the more damage it does. Some people listened, some did not. Those who listened found freedom. Those who did not found only more bitterness." You begin rehearsing the wrong. You replay the conversation. You imagine what you should have said. You build arguments in your head. You gather evidence. You prepare your case. And every time you do this, the resentment grows stronger. You make it more permanent. The wound does not heal because you keep reopening it. You keep pouring salt into it. And you call this processing. You call it venting. But Padre Pio said it is feeding the monster. It influences your prayers. You cannot think about anything else for long before the resentment pulls you back. And at this stage, people often do not even want to let it go anymore because letting it go would mean losing part of themselves. They do not know who they would be without the anger. And removing it requires surgery. The person must be willing to cut it out, even though it will hurt, even though it will leave a scar. Because if they do not, it will eventually kill them, not their body, their soul. Then, in 1934, the partner sold the company without telling Antonio. He forged Antonio's signature on the documents. Antonio found out after the sale was complete. He sued. He lost. The partner kept the money. Antonio spent the next 30 years consumed by resentment. He talked about it every day. His wife was exhausted. His children were tired of hearing about it. But Antonio could not stop. When he entered the confessional, Padre Pio looked at him and said, "You are already dead." Antonio said, "Father, I am alive." Padre Pio said, "Your body is alive. Your soul died 30 years ago. You have been walking around like a ghost, haunting your own life. You think you are fighting for justice, but you're just punishing yourself. Your partner moved on decades ago. He's probably dead by now, but you're still fighting him. You are shadowboxing in an empty room. You let him take your life." He said, "Father, help me let it go." Padre Pio said, "It is simple. You choose, right now, this moment. You say, 'I forgive him, I release myself,' and then you walk out of here and you do not pick it up again." They had their father back, not the shell of a man who had been living in the past, but the man himself, present, alive, capable of joy again. After Mass, Antonio approached Father Joseph and said, "I feel like I have been given a second chance at life. I wasted 30 years. I will not waste another day. I will be the judge. I will be the executioner. I will make sure this person pays." And in doing that, you take God's place. You commit the sin of pride. You put yourself on the throne that belongs only to Him. And I trust that your justice is better than mine. So I let go, I give this to you, and I choose to live in freedom rather than in chains. That is the act that transforms a soul. She said, "Why did you let this happen? Why did you not protect him? Why did you not catch the person who did this?" It was the will of a man who chose evil. God did not cause it. He permitted it because He gave human beings free will, but He did not abandon your brother. He was there when your brother died. He held him. He brought him home. You can let this resentment destroy you, or you can let your brother's memory be a blessing instead of a curse. Right now, you are making his death the center of your life. Every thought, every prayer, every moment is defined by his death. But He would not want that. He would want you to live. He would want you to love. He would want you to find joy again. Honor Him by living well, not by dying slowly inside. She went to the chapel. She knelt before the Blessed Sacrament. And she prayed, not for justice, but for peace. She prayed for the strength to forgive even though she did not know who to forgive. She prayed for the grace to let go even though she did not want to. And slowly, over weeks and months, the resentment loosened its grip. She still missed her brother. She still grieved. But she stopped letting the anger consume her. She stopped demanding answers that would never come. She chose to trust, and in that trust, she found a kind of peace that defied logic. You will experience injustice, that is certain. But what you do with that pain is your choice. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. Bitterness closes the heart. It builds walls. It cuts you off from love, from grace, from God. But forgiveness opens the heart. It tears down walls. It makes space for new life. Choose forgiveness, not once, but every day. Every time the resentment tries to return, choose forgiveness again, and again, and again, until one day you realize the resentment is gone and all that remains is peace. The ones people did not think of as sins: pride, resentment, unforgiveness, because those were the sins that killed souls slowly. Those were the sins that kept people from God without them even noticing. Entire lives. And every single one of them said the same thing. Padre Pio saw through them. He saw the poison they were carrying. and he refused to let them keep it. He demanded they let it go, not gently, not with soft words that made them feel comfortable, but with the kind of love that tells the truth even when it hurts. The kind of love that says, "You are dying, and I care too much to let you keep killing yourself." He told himself the old man got what he deserved, not because he earned it, because you need to be free. He said he could pray again without feeling the weight. And he said he finally understood what Padre Pio had been trying to tell him. Forgiveness was not about the other person. It was about freedom. Forgiveness makes you the one who holds the key. They said his homilies were not as good. They said his pastoral care was not as warm. When the old priest died, hundreds wept at the funeral. One parishioner said, "We have lost our true shepherd." But in that moment, he resented them deeply. Over the following months, that resentment grew. He went through the motions of his duties without warmth. The people complained more, which made him resent them more. The cycle fed itself. When Father Marco entered the confessional, Padre Pio said, "Father, you are celebrating Mass with a heart full of poison." Father Marco stammered, "Padre, I do my duty." Padre Pio's voice rose, "Duty? You think God wants duty? He wants love. And you are giving him resentment dressed up as obedience. You stand at the altar with a cold heart. You consecrate the host with hands that are pure, but a heart that is bitter." "Ah," Padre Pio said, "you forgive them. All of them. Every person who compared you, every person who said you were not good enough. You forgive them, not because they deserve it, because you need to be free." And when he returned to his parish, he was different. He visited the sick with renewed energy. He smiled at the people who had wounded him. And gradually the parish changed too. They stopped comparing him. They started to see him for who he was. They began to love him. The Vatican suspended his faculties for 2 years, from 1923 to 1925, forbidding him from hearing confessions or celebrating public Mass. He was investigated, scrutinized, humiliated. Through it all, witnesses reported that he never spoke bitterly about his accusers. "Well, Alessio, if I held on to every wrong done to me, I would have no room left for God. Resentment is expensive. It costs your peace. It costs your joy. It costs your relationship with God. I cannot afford it, so I let it go. Every day, I let it go, and every day, I'm free." When people asked how a man who suffered so much could be so joyful, he would say, "I do not carry what God does not give me to carry. He gives me the cross of the stigmata. That is his will. But the cross of bitterness, that is not from him, that is from the enemy, and I refuse to carry it." He would say to his spiritual children, "You're so tired, I see it in your faces. But look at what you're carrying. Half of it is not even yours. You're carrying other people's sins, other people's failures. You're carrying resentment, unforgiveness, grudges, bitterness. Put it down." Jesus said his yoke is easy and his burden is light. If your burden is heavy, it is because you are carrying things he never asked you to carry. 50. He wrote, "It is as if the suffering he bore in his body never touched his heart." The report, archived in the Vatican Medical Records under file reference CDF PP 2008 Med 12, concluded with a note that seemed almost unscientific, but was recorded nonetheless. A heart free of bitterness does not decay the same way.